Welcome to the World Vision podcast. I am your host, Justin Njovu. And of course, today you are joining me for the second episode of the podcast. And I am privileged to be joined by a force to reckon with in the disability space. And I'm talking about Madam Doreen Chizyuka. You'll get to learn more about her. And, today on the podcast, we are looking at the disability space in Zambia and what World Vision is doing in that space. So let me just go right ahead and introduce Doreen to this lovely discussion. Welcome to the World Vision podcast today.
Thank you, Justin. I'm happy to be here with you today.
And it's such a pleasure to have you on our second episode of this discussion. We had our first one with our national director, and there was interesting things that came our way. And I looked at my list and I said the best candidate for our second episode is Doreen. And today we are talking about disability. Can we get straight into our discussion?
Yes, please.
Who is a disabled person?
To start with, Justin, I'll be honest to tell you, I don't know who a disabled person is because we do not have a disabled person. Yeah, that was on a lighter note. But we need to straight away learn that in the disability space, we have terms that are preferred to be used because they don't turn out or sound to be discriminatory. So when you want to ask about disability in relation to a person, the right question to ask is, who is a person with disability?
Interesting. And of course, I think that is really taking us into the meat of our discussion. I know you're very passionate about language surrounding disability. But before we get to that, maybe our listeners and our viewers would be interested to get to learn more about Doreen and the work that you do. What drives your passion?
Well, Doreen is this human being, indeed, who has passion for disability. I'm employed in World Vision in the area of gender equality and social inclusion. And my bias is social inclusion, especially disability. What really drives me in the disability space is the fact that when you deal with a person with disability in any area of life, and you put a smile on their face, you become this person who encourages them and drives them to do even more. Our society, where we are coming from, did not know that a person with disability could actually do what any other person can do. And so there was issues of stigma, issues of stereotyping, issues of myths that surrounded disability, which we grew up with. And now, because we are able to talk about disability in the open, freely, and a person who has a disability will actually gladly share their life in order that we learn what limitations they have. When we do understand their barriers, we are best placed to work with them. So what drives me really, what gives me the passion, is that a person with disability is not a beneficiary, especially in World Vision work. A person with disability is a stakeholder, is a partner in development. Thank you, Justin.
Interesting. And maybe even before, because the topic around disability is such a wide topic, and maybe, before we get into the actual details, who has defined a person with disability and how do they define them?
We all actually have defined a person with disability through our perception. But what is appropriate is to just say not a person with disability, but a disability itself. So I would say a disability is a limitation that's imposed on a person because of impairment and due to barriers. When we talk like that, we are not putting a person to define a disability. We are putting the limitation due to impairment and because of a barrier as a definition. An individual is just an individual created in the image of God. And when they have an impairment, that's not to say they have a disability. But when they meet a limitation because of impairment, it's at this point that we define disability. It really has nothing to do with an individual.
Interesting. And well, that would bring us to, the standards that have been established in defining disability. Of course, one of the things that you've highlighted is the issue of limitation. So then, I would want to know what, if there's any acceptable standards that should be used to refer to, people with disability.
Yes, Justin, there is, in inverted commas. Yeah, we grew up referring to a person as a person living with disability. But with time, we have evolved. And it has turned out that when you refer to a person with disability as a person living with disability, impliedly, we are saying this person is struggling to live. They are barely coping because of having a disability. The appropriate term that is preferred is a person with disability.
Person with disability. And who, is there like a standard, who has come up for us to agree on having that definition? Is there like maybe a document that people should refer to? Because I think one of the things that really make it difficult in most conversations is how to refer to people with disability.
We have a document called the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability. It was agreed upon in the UN. People came together and had conversations like we are having, and a lot of issues were brought about, and it was agreed that actually it's demeaning to the people that were involved. Most of them had disabilities. And so they felt like it was demeaning to be referred to as a person who is living with disability. Like I said, it makes everybody feel like this person is struggling daily and this person is just coping with life because of a disability. So these are issues that were discussed at high level. Zambia is actually part of that discussions, and we did sign as a country to agree to the terms that are in that document.
Interesting. And how widespread is this document? How accessible is it?
It's very accessible, but because people don't know about it. I'll tell you what, Justin, when even the constitution that's being talked about in Zambia, I don't think many people have accessed whether there's a draft copy, whether there's a copy. We are so busy with our day-to-day life, and we don't want to go further unless it interests you like it has interested you now. You strive to look for that document, but it's very accessible. You can Google it. You can go to any government office. I have a copy which I can share with everybody.
Interesting. That's interesting. Well, let's get to the actual terms. For example, a person who is lame, how do you refer to them? Is it okay to say someone is lame according to the document?
No, it's not. So when you read about disability, you will learn that disabilities are categorized in, for example, physical. Yes, so as opposed to you referring to an individual as a lame person, you would want to say they have a physical disability. It's quite respectful. It doesn't sound demeaning.
Interesting. It seems I'm wrong today.
Today, Justin, isn't just one of those days. But I'm glad you are taking us there. Everybody else will benefit upon hearing this.
Okay. And one who is deaf or dumb?
So for deafness, yes, you can say deaf. But there are others who are partially, yeah? So those are hearing impaired.
Okay. So then what's the advisable way of referring to?
So in my personal capacity, Justin, I don't advise us to refer to a person by their disability. Unless it gets to a place where it's really difficult for the other person to identify who we're talking about.
Yeah.
If there's two Justins here, and one of them has hearing impairment, and they are both Justin Njovu,
yeah.
At this point, it's inevitable. You would want to add their disability just to describe them.
Yeah.
But my own advice is that we should by all means get to have a relationship with this person,
yeah.
know them by their name, and identify them by their name. Much as we want to learn what the appropriate terms are, I think my advice is that let's go further and know people by their names.
Yeah.
But it's just right also to describe it as deaf and hearing impaired if it's partial.
Yeah. Well, that's quite informative.
For the dumb, there's nothing like that. It's just somebody with speech impairment. Yes.
Yeah. I'm thinking this is useful information, especially for our listeners and our viewers who may not really have the chance to look at the document. So are there any other forms of disability that you'd want people to know and the appropriate words that can be used to refer to them if they reach a point where they cannot really refer to them on a personal note?
Yes, so for World Vision, we are child-focused. And in the areas where we work, we might come across a child who has an intellectual disability, for example.
Yeah.
And the families themselves would refer to this person as in Tonga, like they are not normal.
Yeah.
But this is an intellectual disability. There are some who are slow learners. That's also a disability.
Yeah.
We want to refer to them as Down children. That's not correct. That discourages.
Yeah, I've heard in certain instances actually refer to them as an imbecile.
An imbecile.
Yeah, an imbecile.
Those are words that are ancient. They were correct then. But as we get more and more exposed, as we get more and more learned in these areas, as we interact more with people who have these disabilities, we tend to learn how hurtful it can be to refer to a person with that term. So for a child who has intellectual disability, there are some that are autistic. We just have to be deliberate, perhaps, to read more and understand. But generally, anything that has to do with the brain, people want to take it as madness or Down, but I would advise that we look for appropriate terms such as learning disability, and some just who have intellectual disability.
Interesting. I wish we could just do a wrap on the appropriate terms when it comes to referring to people with disability. But of course, I think the biggest takeaway is really to get to have a personal relationship, as you've said, rather than defining people by their incapacities. So then, let's get to look at what World Vision is doing in addressing some of these issues that we've talked about. Maybe from the top of your head, would you kind of give us, like statistics in terms of how many people with disability do we have in Zambia at the moment?
In Zambia, we do not have exact statistics. The reason being our registration process of persons with disabilities has not given us up-to-date, accurate data. But from the 2015 census or 2015 statistics done by UNICEF, yes, we had a record of 10.9% of adults above the age of 18. From the total population, 10.9% had disabilities. And for children, that's from 2 to 17 years of age, it was at 4.4% of the total population who were recorded to have had disabilities then.
So we're talking about statistics from 2015. So that tells me something is not right. Are people with disabilities being ignored in our communities?
From World Vision perspective, no. And that's the reason, one of the things World Vision has done is to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Zambia Agency of Persons with Disabilities in order for us to collaborate in doing whatever we can, to whatever extent, to take a record and account of a person with disability in the areas where we work. This is going to contribute to the numbers. So what we are doing as World Vision is, in every area that we are working, we are encouraging people to collaborate with the Zambia Agency for Persons with Disability Office to do the registration of persons with disabilities, regardless of whether they are children or adults, even though we work strictly with children in a way, but we work with all members of the households and with the community. And so we are requesting that every effort be made to collaborate with ZAPID to take a record through registration. And this will obviously contribute to the country record, and the country record will contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals.
Interesting. And I'm glad that you've brought out the issue of partnership with ZAPID. Can you maybe share a little bit more? I'm actually pleased to know that World Vision is actually taking account of people with disabilities in the communities they're operating in. So does this mean that since we have a partnership with ZAPID, does this mean that it will also extend to the areas where World Vision is not operating, so that we can have like a proper statistic in terms of accounting for these people, so that we know the kind of social amenities they may require, like any other person? So
Justin, as World Vision, we can only do so much. But that's the hope, that we can reach every person with disability. But what this does for World Vision is, in our collaboration with ZAPID, we take account of every person with disability in an area where we are working. It helps us to budget, because oftentimes the issue has been on budgeting for a person with disability. Why do I say so? Is if you call for a meeting to assess accessibility, for instance, there are some persons with disabilities who might come with an assistant. And if you budgeted for just 10 people, and out of the 10, 3 with disabilities come with assistants, it means you have extra 3. And an accountant will just tell you, I budgeted for 10.
Yeah.
And so we are being deliberate as World Vision to take account of all persons with disabilities. We check what sort of disabilities they are, and we put extra costing to the disability. In an instant where, for instance, in WASH, you find out that we are calling for people to have latrines at households, and this latrine is not accessible by a person with disability. You might want to do something to the latrine for it to be accessible. And an accountant will tell you, no, we didn't budget for that. Yeah. So this is actually helping us a lot in terms of budgeting, in terms of planning. Actually, from the design point of view as well, when we are designing our projects, we are aware that there are people with disabilities who we need to take into consideration when we are doing that.
Okay, so does that mean we make efforts to ensure that people with disabilities are also able to access the services that we provide in our communities? And if so, are you able to share some of the examples in which we are ensuring that we are inclusive for people with disabilities in our programming? Okay, so
yes, we are. And an example I'll give is, recently we did an innovation where we allowed entrepreneurs with disabilities to supply to World Vision. without any serious competition from entrepreneurs who are well established. And so what we did was through the disability organizations to help us bring together entrepreneurs who have disabilities. We trained them in the little financial skills that we could as World Vision. We also took them through the procurement processes of World Vision so that they could understand how we go about our procurement process. When we started in 2023, we had 10 register to be suppliers. But trust me, to date, on record, we have 30 entrepreneurs. So we have created a WhatsApp group for them where we post our requirements. Everything is done within the required standard. There's nothing that they do as a shortcut, but we make it easy for them to access procurement requirements by World Vision. Otherwise, everything else, their companies are legally registered, they have disability cards to prove their disabilities, and what we have ensured is that these businesses are really owned by this person with a disability. We have helped some open bank accounts, and as a starter, those who could not transport the items to the point where we needed it transported, we assisted them by transporting the goods to the national office, and the national office would transport the goods at the user point. So this is just so we could get these people have an independent living, and also their income increase as households. Yeah.
Well, that sounds very good, and I want to kind of just get a picture of what disability looks like, especially in the areas where you operate as World Vision, in comparison to what disability looks like in urban areas. From your experience, are you able to just paint a picture of what disability looks like in rural areas? Yes. In rural areas, there are issues of access. Yeah. There are a lot of environmental barriers. We don't have roads that can move a wheelchair without trouble, for instance. Yeah? We don't have schools that are accessible to children who are at the appropriate school-going age. We also do not have social amenities that are found in the urban. You find that a hospital is some kilometers away from a household, and if there's a child who perhaps needs physiotherapy, for example, they will not access it in the rural area. But in the urban, we even have programs that follow children at some centers that have been created for such. Yeah. And then in urban, of course, we have, to an extent, good accessibility. Yeah. But in rural areas, you don't get to find that. And then in rural areas, also, Justin, because of our cultural issues, we get a lot of persons with disabilities not able to participate meaningfully in their communities. But in the urban, that somehow has been done away with, and you find persons with disabilities participating fully and meaningfully. Interesting. And prior to this discussion, we were just chatting on the sidelines, and you are telling me about your next passion, and you are talking about nutrition for children with disability in rural communities. Would you mind sharing that? Yes, indeed, that's my next passion, because you find out that children with disabilities, sometimes because of the kind of disabilities, they are not able to feed properly. And here is a mother who is supposed to spend so much time feeding this child. The same mother is expected to go and fetch water, and the same mother is expected to go and attend to the field. So when the child does not feed in the way that we expect them to do,
a mother would do it in a quicker way and leave. And so what I'm thinking of is through our PD Health, to be able to narrow it down to PD Health for disability, where we have specific feeding techniques taught to mothers who have children with disabilities. We have specific nutritional needs shared with parents who have children with disabilities, as opposed to bringing it just open as nutrition program, but it must be specific to children with disabilities. Because believe me, it is very easy for a child with a disability to have malnutrition if they are not paid attention to in terms of feeding.
Is it a nightmare to mobilize maybe parents that have these children that may have challenges in feeding because maybe they are spread apart? How common is it that they can be brought together and trained in methods like the one that you've spoken about?
It's not easy because, like I told you, where we are coming from, there's a lot of myths about disability. There's a lot of cultural barriers. Yeah. And so when you just go in, like I stand here, I go in a community and tell them I would like to meet parents who have children with disabilities, they would like to know what? I mean, why? They've heard so many things that go with disability. For instance, we have albinism as a target for people who have wrong beliefs. And if I invite such a one to come where I'm meeting the rest for a feeding program, they will not easily trust. So we are working on mechanisms that will help us buy the trust of the people that we are working with. And as World Vision, I think we have done so much and so well in that area. We need to earn the trust of mothers with children with disabilities before they can be coming together to learn those techniques that will help them and their children.
And what's the problem right now for these children? Are we witnessing, like, what's the challenge that we're trying to address? Are we losing lives from?
Yes, we are actually losing lives. We are just coming out of a drought.
Yeah.
There was no food. And you can imagine in a rural community where perhaps they will have just one meal and the same meal every day. Maybe it's shima with cassava and cassava leaves every day. Yeah. You get to have a child go through malnutrition, and of course at the end of the day a life is lost.
Yeah. Interesting to see that at least you are doing something to change that narrative. So then let's progress, and I know recently you were awarded the Zero Project Award.
Yes.
Are you able to share a little bit more about the award and what World Vision did to deserve this award?
Yeah, so this is an international award which recognizes innovation from different areas. And this innovation must be an innovation which improves the lives of people with disabilities. And I just talked about our innovation on listing businesses of persons with disabilities to supply to World Vision. So this award has categories. Yeah, so we fell under the category of employment, because when a person with disability is an entrepreneur and they are allowed to supply to World Vision, this is more of a self-employment. Some of them actually are able to employ a second person to assist them with the business. Yeah. So we were recognized for this because it's life-changing. It improves the entrepreneur's life. And also one of the areas that they look at is whether this innovation is scalable. Is it sustainable? Yeah. And so it turned out that our innovation actually can be replicated.
Wow.
And it's sustainable, because once a person has started their business and with the skill that we teach them in the beginning, they are able to replicate even with other organizations within the disability space.
Interesting. And what does this mean for World Vision moving forward after getting, that recognition?
So what it means for World Vision is, of course, our reputation is built, that we are committed to improving the lives of persons with disabilities. We also have collaborations, because at the award ceremony, there are several experts that are there who we get to meet, exchange learnings, share what World Vision is. And we actually even have an opportunities of getting donors within there.
Interesting. And even as we are coming to a close of our discussion, are you able to also share with me how World Vision is making an effort to ensure that all the staff that World Vision are aware about, challenges that are being faced in the disability space? Is there anything that we're doing to, ensure that staff are ready to handle disability in the communities they serve?
Yes. So first and foremost, for the new staff, it's a requirement when you are getting to be on board. There are some online courses that one is required to do. And in the Gender Equality and Social Inclusion package, we have a training called Traveling Together. It's a disability inclusion training, which is mandatory. Every staff in World Vision has to take that training. And so this is a call to the rest of the staff. If you have not done that training, please contact us. We also have the JESI training, which is a mandatory training. It is a requirement that every staff does take that training. So it's in these trainings that disability issues are brought about. We are sharing, sometimes actually when we are doing the traveling together, we do get persons with disabilities to be part of the training team, because they are able to share with us exactly what the issues are in the disability space. We don't leave out ZAPID, we don't leave out social welfare.
Interesting. And you've mentioned the two, key teams or groups or partners that World Vision is working with to ensure that, we promote the welfare of people with disability in Zambia. So then I want to know, I know you've done a number of things, and among the recent things that you did was a project with World Vision Australia and the Dylan Alcott Foundation that came through and, witnessed disability firsthand in Africa. What message do you have for people that may be interested to partner with World Vision Zambia globally to the work that you are doing, like what Dylan came, and maybe you can also just highlight a few things that came out of the visit, and maybe a little bit of who Dylan is. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin. So Dylan is a renowned sportsman who has a disability himself. He uses a wheelchair, and he was interested to see and experience the hardships that a child in the rural community faces because of a disability. One thing that interested me a lot about him was he really wanted to experience it firsthand. And so when we went to the field, he wanted to use the pit latrine. And after that experience, he really came out as a person who was ministered to by the tough times that he endured in the field. I would say endured because he expressed it himself. Yeah. So one of the things that came out really is that at household level, there's very little that they can do in the rural community if they don't receive any awareness help about disabilities, because some of them don't even understand what disability is, the type of disability a child has, and they want to know. We came across a parent who said they felt like they sinned But in finding out what really the cause of disability was, there was issues of witchcraft and everything else. But disability has an explanation even from a medical point of view. And that's why when we are doing our registration, we take along qualified doctors, medical personnel come with us to try and help the parents understand. So one of the things that we are striving to do is to demystify, make people understand that it can happen to anyone. We don't really have an explanation to that, but it can happen. Yeah. And so to the people out there, after Dylan gave us a visit through World Vision Australia, we are looking into working on a partnership that will support families with disabilities in whichever area that we'll select in Zambia, because we can't go everywhere at a given time. And so this is a call to other people who can come on board. Disability issues are real. Disability in rural communities is more painful because children live far away from schools, they live far away from health facilities. And what is it that we can do together to bring these services close? What is it that we can do together to make a mother who is caring for a child with disability live a positive life without ever feeling like they are alone? How can we bring this community that we are working with close to the next community, perhaps where we haven't worked already, to also feel like what is being done in that community can be done in our community as well. So we are calling on as many people as can to come on board for disability support.
Thank you so much, Doreen, for your time.
Thank you, Justin.
Indeed. And to you, our viewers and our listeners, we thank you so much for taking time to listen to this discussion that I had with Doreen. Be sure to join me again on another episode. On the next episode, another interesting topic is coming up. And of course, for more on what Doreen just mentioned, there should be a link somewhere here that you can click if you want to get to watch the documentary that was done. It's actually called The Road to Kasama. So when you click that link, you'll be able to see what disability looks like in rural Zambia. That link is also posted in the description of this video on YouTube, and of course for the audio on the audio file, we'll also be able to post that in the description. So from me, Justin Njovu, thank you so much for taking time to join us on the Wider Vision. Until next time, it's bye-bye.